Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Awesome Radio, 106.7.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU, Winterville, Aden, Clifton, Greenville, North Carolina. You are tuned into the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Collins Williams. We have a special guest with us today who is a special education teacher, Miss Chastity Roseborough. And here's my co-host, Apostle Jacqueline Collins Williams.
Hey, Dr. Glenn, and to our listening audience on today, we are glad to be here today, and we're so glad for our subject on today. We're going to talk about autism awareness and talk about social skills for children that have autism or individuals that have autism. We don't want to leave it just at children, but what we talk about today is going to be good for even those teenagers and even adults. And I guarantee you that if you tune in on today, you're going to learn something. And as Dr. Glenn said, we do have a special guest on today, Chastity Roseborough, who is an EC teacher, and she's going to give us some insight on some things that we may not know or some things that we might need to know for those that are being introduced to this subject on today. And so I am going to turn the mic over and I am going to ask Miss Roseborough if she would introduce herself and let her tell us something about herself on today. Miss Roseborough?
Hello, everyone. My name is Chastity Roseborough, and I am a special education teacher here in Pitt County. And I have been working in this field for 17 years, excuse me. I started out as a moderator for a academically gifted class teaching Latin, and I moved into the classroom working with kids that are on the standard course of study but who require additional assistance, so they call the class curriculum assistants. And I have since moved in. I've worked with the severe and profound. I am now working in the self-contained classroom, and I have a mixture teaching grades from 4th through 8th.
That is awesome. So we have somewhat of someone that works and is out in the field every day that is doing it. And so we're going to rely upon her for some information for our listening audience on today. I also want to say, tell us about your son. Don't forget that on this broadcast.
I have one son. He is the apple of my eye. He may not be anybody else's, but he is mine. He has currently finished his freshman year at Towson University in Maryland. He's playing football. So this has been a transition for me, being an empty nester, also learning how to be me again. Not having to go to this practice and that practice, being able to branch out and not have to run back home because I have to make sure I'm at a game. But he is right now in summer camp, working on and preparing for the next football season. And he is probably listening to us right now, so I'm going to hear it later on.
I will be his listen because I want to just mention something to your son because I'm an advocate for brain injury. And therefore, I am a sitting member of the North Carolina Brain Injury Advisory Council. And we talk a lot about prevention and safety. And they say the average football player, when they get hit, it's like being in 3 car accidents because of that sudden impact. And they said football is not only a contact sport, it's a collision sport. So I want your son to remain as safe as possible and all his teammates.
Definitely, Dr. Glenn. That's some great advice for her son. I happen to have met him, so I know he's a big dude, a really, really big guy.
Well, maybe the other guys better watch out for him.
They better watch out. Do you hear me? So we would just want to remind you today that you are able to call in if you'd like to weigh in on this topic today, that our studio line is 252-756-2008. Again, that number is 252-756-2008. And we just want to caution you and let you know that your comments will be on the radio, live on the radio. So you can call in and weigh in on our topic today. We know this is a great subject, and there's a lot of people that know someone or they themselves are raising children that have autism. And so this subject is very, very needful on today. Dr. Glenn?
And don't forget, we are Facebook Live. And after the broadcast, obviously the video will be available on Facebook and also on Awesome Radio YouTube page or YouTube channel, I should say. And let's not forget our sister station, 100.3 Smooth Radio, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Also, we still have our 106.9, which is all Spanish speaking Christian media. Jackie.
Yes, so we're going to get kicked off here. We know that in a few minutes we'll go to a break, but let's get in deep. And let's start by asking Miss Rose, how would you define autism? And I know this is off the script here, but how would you define? We need to define, I believe, autism.
It's hard to define autism actually because it presents differently in everyone. You can pick up on the characteristics of autism, and there are certain guidelines and parameters that when going through evaluations, be it if you're going through the school psychologist, they are not actually able to diagnose autism, but it is something that they can say it's on the spectrum and it does affect their classroom performance and their school performance. Autism is typically diagnosed by the pediatrician. And here again, it's various guidelines, but there are things with developmental delays. There are social cues that a student may not normal or typically developing student may not present with, that a student that is or a child that is diagnosed with autism presents with. Usually someone that is autistic, they see things in black and white. There is no gray area. It's hard for them to pick up on things like sarcasm. It's hard for them to understand certain jokes. They may be the individual that is typically by themselves because they don't understand, and it also depends on what area of the spectrum they're on, because autism has gone through such different processes that it's allowed for different guidelines, different regulations of what autism actually is.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, so is IDD in the same family as autism, intellectual disability? And the reason why I asked that question, I'm a volunteer with Pitt County Sheriff's Office, and we be riding parades in our vehicle, and we have been instructed not to activate our siren because that might set some of the children off with autism. You know, they're standing out to watch the parade, but if you hit the siren, that might send them to an episode.
IDD is typically not the same thing as autism. It is a individual diagnosis by itself, but a child that has IDD may also have autism. So you can have one without the other.
Right.
Yes, and so that is very interesting to see. We're going to get ready in a moment to go out to a break, and when we return, we're going to have a audio which Dr. Glenn will open up by giving us a disclaimer for it. When I saw this particular audio, I was very surprised at how in the past that autism or kids that were autism were grouped in with mental illness, and they were also hospitalized in the past and kept in mental institutions because they were autistic. And so, what a great shock and how far we've come, in modern day times. We're going to look at this particular audio and listen to it. I mean, actually listen to the audio and get some information. So we want you to come right back with us. Hang on in there. It's a good subject. We got some good information. We want you to don't leave. Don't leave at the break. Stay with us. Right back in a moment.
Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM.
My name is Jayla, and you're to see to my papa, Glenn Johnson, on the radio.
Hello, my name is Daniel out of Greenville. Thank you for listening to Awesome Radio 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glenn Johnson Show. Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Collins Williams, and our special guest, special education teacher, Rose. It's Chastity Rosebud, I'm so sorry. But we're going to get to this brief audio clip. This audio clip I extracted from a PBS special. The special itself was approximately 59 minutes. So I took the first 3 minutes of the audio of the video and made that an audio clip. And I want to give a little content warning. So please note that this episode may contain trauma that some people may find disturbing. Also, it might mention suicide and things of that nature. So just be advised of the content of the audio. If anybody's uncomfortable, I can only say just turn your volume down, but stay with us. We have a lot more to discuss. And our audio engineer will play that clip for us now.
There are over 7 million mentally ill and emotionally disturbed children in America. This program is about some of those children and the institutions they live in. Children of Darkness, next on nonfiction television. This program is made possible by a grant from the Independent Documentary Fund, which is supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Ford Foundation, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and public television stations. This program contains language and sequences some viewers may find disturbing.
His name is Brian. Along with 16 other mentally ill children, he's on a bus trip to the zoo. Brian believes that somebody is following him.
A truck. Truck's following us. Truck's following us. A truck's following us. A truck's following us. That guy back there is driving me crazy. Oh God. Oh God, they dropped in. Oh God. Oh, Dan Wax, you better stop that truck. Dan Wax, you better stop that truck. Uncle, bus! Come on, motherfucking dog with my dad. I'm gonna kill you.
Brian suffers from mania and schizophrenia. He's been this way since he was 4 years old. Brian lives here at Eastern State School and Hospital in Trevose, Pennsylvania. 160 children live with him. They're psychotic, schizophrenic. They suffer from organic brain damage and autism. Some are hyperactive, some totally withdrawn. Some are suicidal.
I was trying to kill myself so I could be with my mother. That may be hard to understand, but I feel as though once you're dead, you'll be able to be with the other people that are also dead. I love her a lot. And I don't even know her, and that's what's so funny. Like, 'cause I was so young when she died. I don't even know what she looks like or anything. But I just wish she was alive. I have an identity problem. My mom died, my father took off on me, and it hurts. It hurts a lot.
When you started cutting it yourself, what was going on inside your head?
I just wanted to die to be with my mom. I didn't care no more. I didn't care about nobody no more.
Are you going to stay alive or are you going to die?
That's a tough question to answer because I don't know. Sometimes I feel like killing myself. Other times I'm happy and I want to live forever.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was a brief audio clip. As I mentioned, I hope that didn't make anybody uncomfortable, but this is an issue that's important to all of us and something that needs to be discussed. But I have a question for my co-host and for the teacher, Miss Roseborough. So when the young man Brian was talking, he said he thought somebody was following him. They were on this bus heading to a zoo. And could I depict that as maybe it's just he doesn't quite comprehend. It's just another vehicle on the road heading in the same direction, not so much as to following them. Would that be safe to say?
Miss Rose, would you like to answer that?
I would say because that's part of that social skills that schizophrenia, paranoia. You all have that constant fear that someone's after you.
Yeah, and the thing that really strikes me and really touches my heart is a young girl when she was speaking about her mom passed and her dad. It was just some turmoil in the house. So she wanted to commit suicide so she could be with her mom. And that to me signifies or indicates that although she might have some issues, she still thinks like any other person. Maybe she don't quite comprehend by doing that, she'll leave this world. But in her mind, she wants to be with her mom.
Definitely. And I was going to say, Dr. Glenn and to Chastity, the teacher, EC teacher, kids with autism, they do those particular things too. And so maybe, seeing them grouped in, I felt especially very, very, I guess, very sensitive about seeing kids that had autism being put into a mental hospital because back in time people didn't understand their behaviors or the ways that they cope with certain things, but we have come so far in today's time until it's just not like that anymore. The understanding about it has come up so much, and I'm going to let Miss Rose give us some commentary on that.
Yeah,
Yes, that was unfortunately a way that they chose to deal with kids with disability, period. Autism was something that they didn't have a name for. They just thought that the child was acting out, that, of course, if we do certain things, um, we can fix it. We can always fix it, or they don't deserve to be a part of society. And completely taking them away from society didn't give them chances to grow, didn't give them stimulation in the areas that they needed to possibly learn how to cope with, giving them the tools to work with to give them a successful life in society.
yeah, and that being said, let me ask you a question. Because in that video, you mentioned the facility in Trevose, Pennsylvania. That's right outside of Philadelphia. When I was a driver at one of the limousine companies, we also had a paratransit division. And I remember being in the van, going to that facility to pick up and drop off these children with autism. And it's quite a sight to see. But my question is, so if things changing now, because I noticed one of the reasons why they was going to that facility, but not so much as to be, you know, looked at in a medical spectrum, but they were actually going into work, some kind of physical labor. It wasn't much, but it was like a little work program.
That is awesome. And even in today's time, we still see that, Dr. Glenn, where there are programs, there are so many things that have advanced to help those that have autism. And so things are just, as we said earlier, it's just so, so different. When we come back, I have a specific question that I'm going to ask Miss Rose, because one of the things that we heard on the particular video was that we heard some sounds and we heard some screaming
Yeah.
and some noises and particular things. And so I think that, I have a particular question that I want to pose to her to help some of us that may not be used to or haven't been around anyone that suffers or that has autism. I don't want to say suffer with it, but some people are suffering, but that have autism. So we're going to ask that question when we return in a moment. We're getting ready to go out to another break here, and we want you to stick with us and come on back to with us. This is Awesome Radio. You can call in. Again, that number is 252-756-2008, and we'll put you on the air. 252-756-2008. This is Awesome Radio. Come on right back with us in a moment.
Hello, my name is Hayden. Thank you for listening to Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU.
We're back. We're back. You're listening to The Glenn Johnson Show. You can reach Glenn at glennjohnsonshow@gmail.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. Welcome back to the Glenn Johnson Show. Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Collins Williams. We are 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU, Winterville, Aden, Grifton, Greenville, North Carolina. I'm not going to delay anything because I know my co-host want to get right to it. She has this question for the teacher. So I'm going to go right over to my co-host, Apostle Jacqueline Collins Williams.
Yeah. So the question that I wanted to pose with to Miss Rose, Miss Chastity, is that some autistic kids can be very impulsive and do sudden outbursts. Like some of them may start barking all of a sudden, or just start talking out of the blue, when they feel nervous or something, speaking loudly. And to others, these actions may be alarming or make others uncomfortable. How do you advise? What advice would you give to others as to not be afraid of a person with autism? It can make people, when they see something different. I mean, even other kids, they could be afraid when they discern something different about that person. How would you advise someone or those that are not used to being around someone with autism and not being afraid of them?
First, have an understanding, because those sounds or certain outbursts, they're ways of their communication. It's also ways for them to control their environment. They are doing this because maybe they're overstimulated and they need to self-regulate themselves. And sometimes those sounds are self-regulation, or they're trying to get people's attention. It is so it's having that understanding for they communicate differently, because that's what I tell my parents, especially when they're new to it and they're kind of having a struggle to understand. They learn differently, they present differently, but it's okay because they're human and they have rights too.
They're human and they have rights. And
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding that this is communication. that this is how they regulate, when they see sometimes the very, something that's normal for you or doesn't bother you. And sometimes being in a crowd or being in a place where there's a lot more noise can actually cause them to feel nervous or anxious. And they're trying to regulate themselves by, sometimes making that noise, just as our teacher said here today, as Chastity said, and understanding, get to know them. A lot of them have great personalities, and outside of these regulatory things and what we call it, I think is called stimming. Is one of the terms that they use, that they're using, that they're trying to help regulate themselves, or they're doing a particular repetitive motion or saying a repetitive phrase over and over again, and they're trying to help control some things in their environment. Miss Rose, would you like to comment more on that?
Yes, because with the stimming, it sometimes is like you said, it's not just verbal. It may be a hand movement. It may be a leg movement. Sometimes it may be a whole body movement because you have some kids that when they stim, they like to hit their head because they that pain that helps them. But we try to protect them. We try to keep them safe as possible. You may see students that wear helmets, and those students that wear helmets are the ones that maybe have that um, problem where they will head bang and they'll hit themselves up against the head, the wall, a desk, or they may even do it with their hand because they're trying to control their environment.
Yeah. And with that being said, some of these instances like a trigger, something that might trigger them to do a certain thing.
Definitely. And that's what we were saying, Dr. Glenn, is that sometimes noise or, being around a bunch of crowd of people, or in a place where they can't pinpoint the noises individually, and there's a lot of noise coming at them, that could be a trigger. And I mean, just different things can be triggers for different kids. It depends on each one of the kids individually, may have their own. And as Miss Rose said, the whole body movement. Sometimes they may get up and just start walking all of a sudden, and they feel like they got to pace or do something to regulate. So those are all a part of it, of what we're talking about here. I wanted to ask Miss Rose, and we were talking about social skills. I wanted to ask her about the challenges with teaching social skills to individuals with autism. And I'm just going to write, just before she answers, I'm going to just read off a few of the social skills for kids: following directions, using manners, having a positive attitude. And these are things that are often used in the school setting. Working with others, having good hygiene, using polite words, taking turns, and greeting, listening to others, being a good sport, waiting and having patience, and understanding personal space. So, Ms. Rose, you can spin off of any one of those that you would like to tell us about some of the challenges in teaching kids with autism social skills.
As I said earlier, that students with autism, they don't understand and they think in black and white. So they don't pick up on the social cues. They don't pick up on the uncomfortableness of people around them as far as their body language and things like that. They don't understand that. Now there are some because you do have some extremely high functioning students with autism. Um, it used to be called one thing, and now what they've done is they just say autism spectrum disorder. So that means that there's a sliding scale. So you could be very highly functioning, you can be very intuitive, you could be really smart. That doesn't take away, having autism doesn't take away from you being smart. Or you could be on the lower end of the spectrum where you have things that you can't learn the typical way. You can always learn, but you can't learn them the typical way. They're not in the classroom participating in a normal sense. So it's hard to teach a student because you have to understand where they are on the spectrum. And you have to understand the student themselves. Because, like I said earlier as well, each student presents differently. So you have to know learn the student and understand what works for them, because the same techniques are not going to work for everybody. Introducing them to different techniques and being consistent. I use in my classroom, I use a lot of charts. We have, if then charts. If you do this, your reward can be this. I also have a student that is higher functioning who is on an autism scale who has um, social stories that he works with, and he can understand those social stories, excuse me. And working with those social stories helps him, because he can verbally tell you, but the self-control issue is what prevents him from controlling his actions.
And let me ask you, is my understanding that these individuals' autism is not that like they're dumb or anything like that. I have been told that they are smart, actually highly intelligent. It's just their brain thinks in a different way. Sort of like what you just said on the autism spectrum. Is that correct?
It is. It is very. We have students who are in a normal classroom setting who have autism who don't have any support because they've learned, someone started working with them very young. They've learned techniques to help control and regulate themselves. Then we have students who are on the severe end of the spectrum who require supports, who require different modifications and accommodations.
And that's exactly what I thought. It's just like me. When people say you don't look like you have a brain injury, well, what am I supposed to look like? Like I told you, the one lady was telling me when I said doctors didn't never expect for me to survive, and I said they had the doctors had told my family, well, even if you do survive, he's not gonna be the same that you know him, and that's what she said. Also, you're supposed to be like retarded, and I was so highly upset when she said that.
Wow, Dr. Glenn. We're getting ready to go out on a break again. So we want you to come on back. We have a few more questions and things for our teacher on today. And we got some more interesting content that we're going to be speaking about. So come on right back with us in one moment. This is Awesome Radio.
Keep it locked right here to the Glenn Johnson Show.
Nifong. Thank you for listening to Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Collins Williams, and our special guest today, Rose of Chastity Roseboro. I don't know what's going on with me today. I just like having fun. And remember, as always, if your awesome radio is not on your radio just isn't on. We're going to continue our topic of discussion. We have reached our final 20 minutes of today's broadcast. And that way, after these 20 minutes, I go home and eat and sleep. Jackie.
Yes, Dr. Glenn, we are going to go and eat and do something. So we're so glad you came back with us on today. I have a few more questions for our teacher on today. And Dr. Glenn, we always call her Miss Rose because we're always struggling with that last name. So we cut it down and call her Miss Rose. So and we don't call her Chastity, we just say Miss Rose. So
I'm going to start calling Miss Rose.
yeah, it's easier.
Because for some reason, while I was struggling, Rosebud kept being in my mind.
Well, it's Roseboro, and call her Miss Rose is fine. So I wanted to ask Miss Rose on today, who is our EC teacher, special guest on our show today. I wanted to ask her to share with us one of her toughest cases concerning kids that have autism. You don't have to give a name, but just tell us some things. And it's a two-part question, part A and part B. Tell us one of your toughest cases to deal with, with a kid with autism, and also one of your cases that has been one of your greatest success stories, because we know that being a teacher and being in the classroom, there's going to be some places where someone else has been more qualified, or they have had better results than we can get. And then and we have to let those particular cases go over to someone else. And then there's some that each teacher or each educator has been successful with themselves. So if you could tell us those two occasions for our listening audience on today.
Well, my toughest case was, I would say, um, having a student where I couldn't quite put my finger on what his triggers were. It would just be out of nowhere, and he would go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. And so that was the toughest case, trying to figure out what his triggers were, understanding his triggers, how to work around those triggers. And to be honest, I still did not figure out what his triggers were, because it seems like the older he got, the more the triggers changed. So it was, in the beginning, it was you could not tell him no. And so we had to be creative by how we said things to him. It was, let's not do it this way. Let's try to do it this way, or asking him how he would solve the problem. And he was one that I actually did have to pass on to another teacher, because I could not wrap my brain around it. But I am now actually teaching him again. So I think that the other teacher had something that, or picked up on something. And so what she did, was she prepared him for me. Because now he's older and he's in the classroom, and he is striving, he's making good momentum. But I would have to say it wasn't me, it was a team effort. It was something that I had to admit, and that's something that all teachers have to be honest. We're not perfect, we don't know everything, and we do rely a lot on each other. Especially for myself, I use my speech language pathologist, my occupational therapist, my physical therapist. Those are different avenues and resources that I use in my classroom to help, and I am very flexible with how I do things, because I'm constantly learning, because everything is constantly evolving. My success story, I would say, would be, I had a student who was autistic and would not answer out in the classroom, would not walk to the board, um, and do any work on the board. But by the time he left and went to high school, he was raising his hand and asking to get up and answer questions. And he actually called me by my name. And so that was, before I was just a grunt. And then it was, you know, slowly but surely it was Miss Rose, and he started asking for me, and I was a preference for him. So I think that was one of my glows, because it was like, okay, that light bulb moment.
And I want to ask you two things. When you just mentioned about this particular person I asked for you, I had the same experience as a driver. Like I said, certain of the students or children, they would only ask for me, well, is Glenn driving? If I didn't show up there to pick them up, they wouldn't do an episode. My other thing is, I just thought about this a minute ago. Was there any of the children facing challenges during COVID with everybody wearing masks? Did that give them a heightened sense of uh, urgency, curiosity, or things of that nature because everybody was doing a mask?
Yes. Well, it wasn't necessarily the high. The parents did a wonderful job, because that's what makes my job easy. If we have that parent participation, I'm one at the beginning of the school year. I ask the parents, are there anything that you're working on at home that we can use in the classroom? to help keep that consistency. Because there are techniques that parents learn. There are things that parents learn how to do at home. And so I try to use those same techniques in the classroom and make them suitable for the classroom. So when we got ready to come back from COVID, many our problem typically was the kids keeping the mask on because of that sensory. I had a couple of students that would start off, but after being in the classroom for 3 4 hours, they were like, okay, I'm done with the mask. And so they would not. I knew at a certain time of the day it was time to take the mask off, because it was just irritating.
Yeah.
But the parents worked with their students, and they taught them and trained them how to keep the mask on and how to do things with the mask on. So I think if it hadn't been for that partnership, excuse me, that it would not have went as well as it did.
Now, I know you ladies work for one particular agency or organization or school, but I want to ask you, do you know anything about the new school in Winterville, Aces for Autism?
I do not know about the new school ACEs for Autism. I just know that ACEs for Autism is a organization that has um, worked with students with autism. They provide supports and training for parents in home. And the new school is supposed to be able to specifically target those students with autism, and there are specific times of the day that will be blocked off for working on social skills and things. It's supposed to be centralized around autism.
Yeah, that's great because if my memory serves me correctly, and it does, I remember a couple years ago speaking to somebody about that school opening up and invited her to the broadcast. So I have to try to find out who she is when the school opens and try to get them on here as well, perhaps with you. Now, oh yeah, 1 minute, Jackie.
Yes, and so that is awesome. I also, as well, don't know that much about it. I've seen it. It's a big, beautiful school. I will say that. Looks like they have a water park in the back. Some things that look like they're for sensory for kids that struggle with sensory problems. I enjoyed Miss Rose's answer as she talked about those that she gave, that those kids that the ones that she's had success with. And I know being in the classroom is a very, very tough place. It can be a place where it's very sensitive concerning things. And we'll talk about that and get some more information from her when we come back from this particular next break. Because I know firsthand, dealing with parents and things, it can be a very, very tough job, and it can be a very, very rewarding job at the same time. But it's a place of sensitivity because parents can be so sensitive about kids, and there's so many rules and regulations and things, do's and don'ts that you can do. It takes a special heart and someone very special to be a teacher or to be in the classroom at all. And so we're going to get ready to go out on another break. We want you to come back. Miss Rose is going to give us some more information. We'll be back in a moment. Awesome radio. Keep it right here.
Jayla, and you're the seed to my papa, Glenn Johnson, on the radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU. We have reached our final 10 minutes of today's broadcast. So without delay, I want to ask my co-host and our special guest, this special education teacher, Chastity Roseborough, a question, and that is there any kind of special interest or special groups, support groups, for people to learn more about autism or to help out if they can? I know the parents of these children are doing a tremendous job, and you could probably need some support. To-
There are some groups. I don't know specific names of groups. I know that there's a Facebook group for parents with autism. You have ACEs for Autism. They have programs, and they have groups that they um, give to parents. So there are resources out there, and it's just a matter of finding them, seeing other people go through the same thing that you're going through, having that
yeah.
support system.
And with that being said, even if we have another topic next week, I will be sure to look up and see if there's addresses, phone numbers for any of these support group agencies or organizations, just for the general public knowledge. Jackie.
And definitely, Dr. Glenn, there are a lot of agencies in this area that do other support outside of the school system, where they have pairing children with people that help them with their skills or that come with them after school to help them. There are a lot of agencies here in this area that do those particular things. So, you can get on your Google and begin to Google it, and you'll see some. But as Ms. Rose said, there are some particular social media groups. If you go on your social media and Google on some of the platforms, you'll see that there are local groups that you can ask to be a part of that are dealing with and talking about autism, or those that support groups for those with autistic kids.
So you can you can Google or just go to your social media platform and just type in the search criteria.
Yes.
All right, that's good to know.
And put it like something like autism in this area or whatever city you're living in, and there'll be a particular group on that social media platform, and I know there is one particular one for this particular area, so you'll be able to find them on those platforms. I had a question real quick for Miss Rose, because as I was expressing before we went out on the break, being a teacher is not necessarily an easy position. I actually have two questions, but I want her to answer this one very, very, very quickly. I wanted to tell us about the difficulties of being a teacher that serves special needs, because there's some difficulties.
There are some difficulties. There are a lot of difficulties because there are times where I am hit. There are times where I'm spit on. There are times where things are thrown at me, and I have to smile and remember I'm in a professional setting. So those difficulties, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of understanding. You also have to have support systems within your classroom where I can just say, okay, I need a minute. I need to go. I need to walk. And I have used that. I have used my lifeline because I have gotten to a point where I was so frustrated or I was so hurt that this happened. And so I just needed to take a moment, take some deep breaths, use some calming techniques that our school psychologists taught us. And I was able to go back in and hit the ball rolling again.
I'm going to ask you another thing. Do you have any of these individuals that's independent? And the reason why I ask that question, when I do my speaking engagement for law enforcement and CIT training, I always mention there was a African American female in South Carolina. She took her son to the police station so he could meet the police officers and they could meet him because he had autism. He met a captain. The captain fell in love with her son, and to this very day, he is the child's godfather. The captain is the child's godfather because his mom said, "Look, I want you to understand. He's not a bad child. He's not drunk, obviously. He's not doing anything criminal. He just can't communicate with you properly because he have autism." That's why she took him to meet all the officers at the police station, and they just embraced him with the warmest heart you could ever imagine. And that's why that captain became that child's godfather.
Yes, and that is something. Was that a question, Dr. Glenn?
That was just a statement.
Okay. And I wanted to say too, that sometimes, Dr. Glenn, concerning, the justice system, there may not be any concessions for having a special issue. That if you do a particular crime, then they may not go easy on you because you say you have this or they say you have that. So it's very important to train children and young people what is right and wrong, regardless to what disability level they have.
As a matter of fact, the first part was a question. So could some of these individuals be independent?
Yes, you have a lot of students that are independent. The ones that are in my classroom, although they're self-contained, they're very independent. And that's part of my job, is to work towards them being independent. Because there are some that will rely on someone for the rest of their lives, but still with that, having them be as independent as possible, being able to dress themselves, being able to potentially one day cook a small meal, those type of things that can help a parent as well rest easy knowing that my child will be okay.
Yeah, and is it safe to say that some of these individuals are living a normal life to them? Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Yes, many are. I have a friend before I came here for many years, and I lived in Colorado, and her son, he lives on his own. He catches the bus, he does everything, he still struggles with certain things that he has to be helped with and supported with, but he does basically live on his own.
Oh, really?
Yes, so they can live on their own.
That's good. That's news to me. That's why I asked. Thank you.
Yes, and so I have one more question, and because it is summertime, and this is probably be our last question, I'm going to ask our teacher, Miss Rose, Miss Chastity, how do you unwind and decompress? It is summertime. What do you do to prepare for the next year and the next fresh batch of kids that are coming in?
Actually, I have not had a full summer. I have worked for the whole summer. I've only had 3 weeks off because I work with certain students over the summer, and I go back to work next week. So I've had the first week in July, these 2 weeks pass, and this week off. But I unwind. I spend time with family and friends. I go to something completely outside of education, as far as reading books, and it has nothing to do with education, nothing to do with children. I just try to get a basis of um, finding me. I hang out with family, friends. I will sleep late. I will unwind in front of some shows, some TV shows that I have been able to watch over the school year. So I've been binge watching some shows, catching up on some shows. So it's just a thing that you have to focus on you when you are on a break.
Yes, and I think that was important to let people know that certain teachers work even further into the school year when everybody else has like the 2 months off. That certain positions continue to work throughout the school year. That's a tough thing. Dr. Glenn?
Ms. Rose, before we end this broadcast, I got one final question for you. And this is no disrespect. This is not related to the topic. Could I ask you, did you fall from a shooting star?
Oh, Dr. Glenn, I thought you was trying to get that phone number or something. She is very beautiful. Miss Rose, you want to answer that question?
I don't think I can.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just had to do it. You know me. But anyway, I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable. I want to put you on the spot. I just had to ask you that.
We're in our last 10 seconds. Dr. Glenn?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in today. 107.5 FM.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson. It's time to have